one of the things that I found really powerful in our conversation prior to this was your focus on community and not just your parent community, yeah, and your families and not your students or your staff, but also your students. And you were
Mhm.
telling me that you have a real big emphasis on having student advisory council, and they had brought up some things. Can you talk a little bit
Mhm.
about that process and kind of what
Sure.
you've gleaned from the
Yeah.
students on that council?
Well, I think if we listen to students, they can tell us quite a bit. And I learned more about that in my time in the city, and we're working with students that were frustrated about their environment and finding ways to improve our experiences so they feel like there's some relevancy in their experiences at school. But I find that in other places that students have a thing or two to say about what it is that they're learning and what might be applicable in their lives. And so we brought together some middle school and high school students this year, and we started asking them questions about their learning experience. What are their relationships like with adults in their building? Do they have a trusted adult? Do they have somebody they can go to? They have someone that really inspires them. One of the first things I talked to our teachers about the welcome back last year was like remind yourself, of your experiences as a student. What was the teacher that really made an impact on you, and what was that like? And so we want to make sure that we're thinking about making that kind of an impact on students and it's helpful to go back to the student's lens and remember what it was like to be a student. And so when I ask students about that, it's interesting to hear from them, what sort of relationships are very meaningful to them in their interactions with adults in their school, but also about the learning environment itself and how engaged that they see their peers being and finding what are the sorts of activities in class that they really remember and that really have helped them and that have really have caused that light bulb to turn on for them and see a connection to something else that they can apply. And so we've learned a lot about some of those kind of thoughts, and also we ask them about the physical spaces as we're looking at this bond issue. What do they notice around them? It's kind of funny when you hear, so you kind of get the Goldilocks approach sometimes. Some of the students, oh, lunchtime's too long. Others, oh, it's too short, or it's too hot in there, it's too cold. But sometimes they do get some ideas about
Right.
what learning could look like what collaboration could look like, and what our spaces need to look like to facilitate effective collaboration. So that was exciting in looking at how we're designing some of our secondary spaces with this bond issue. What are some things that we can do to help facilitate better collaboration with their peers and more hands-on type activities? Hands-on activities, whether it's with robotics, or whether it's with building something, it takes space, and so we had to think about, maybe we don't have the right kind of space to do what they feel like we need to be doing in our classrooms. And then, one of the things that they brought up, and what's a really good balance with technology and actually, using other methods, and so I heard some things from students about some different ways we might look at that too. So overall, I think as a district, we're trying to always improve student engagement. I think that will affect student achievement, that will affect our student attendance. And we know that those are areas that we need to improve, but I think it all comes back to engagement. And so hearing from them, makes a difference, I think.